Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I am Lindy Ruano, and I am with Eastern Seals of Southern California and the Disability Tribe Initiative. Today's live webinar, Strengthening Mental Health Through Empathy and Understanding, will be offering Spanish and ASL interpretation. Para las personas que necesitan o prefieran el español, pueden hacer clic en el icono con el globo blanco en la parte baja de su pantalla que dice Interpretation. Después haga clic en Spanish. Usted tendrá la opción de silenciar el audio original y podría escuchar la voz de Rubén Ruiz traduciendo en vivo. En el canal de español, si selecciona Mute Original Audio, nada más escuchará al intérprete. Si no hace clic en Mute Original Audio, entonces escuchará a los presentadores de habla inglés al fondo. Next slide, please. Our ASL interpreters are Monica and Lorelei. They have been spotted so they can always be seen throughout the presentation. Depending on your device, this may mean that sometimes you cannot see the presenter. We apologize for the inconvenience, but we want to make sure that this live meeting and recording can be accessible to everyone. This presentation will have closed captioning, which you can access by using the buttons at the bottom of the screen. Next slide, please. A few things to note about Zoom before we get started. This meeting is being recorded to allow us to refer back to the discussion today and the input we receive. You can hear and see us, but we cannot hear and see you. Everyone has been automatically put on mute and your camera is not on. Chat is not activated for attendees. However, presenters will be sharing some information through the chat during the webinar. If you would like to ask questions or provide a comment, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We also ask that you indicate which presenter you would like to ask a question to. We have staff monitoring and responding as necessary. Some questions might be answered in real time, some will be saved for later, and some we might ask you for your email address so that we can follow through with a more specific answer for you. For those of you on the phone or a device, you may not be able to use all of the features we discussed. We will be providing other options for you to access materials or ask questions later in the webinar. Finally, at the end of today's webinar, we will be asking you to participate in our post-event survey. Once the webinar is over, a new window will pop open with a survey. Please provide your feedback so we can improve on future events. Thank you. Now, I have the pleasure to introduce a woman with many titles under her, Nicole Attler. Nicole is an advocate, a motivational speaker, council member of the State Council of Developmental Disabilities, and an LGBTQ equal rights advocate. Nicole?
My journey with mental health. I suffer from mental health issues off and on for many years in my life. It's a lot worse since the pandemic because I like being around people. I have been isolated for over a year, like many others. It made me feel alone and depressed. I realized this is not normal and I asked for help. I see a therapist, I take medication, and I listen to music. All these things is helping me move forward and appreciate my life. People need to be more open-minded and talk about mental health like it's an everyday thing. It's part of being a human. We need to talk about it more frequently, make mental health a part of a normal conversation. Let's break down the stereotypes. Not all people with Down syndrome are happy all the time. People with disabilities get depressed and need mental health support, just like everyone else. Just because someone is nonverbal, it doesn't mean they are okay. Be mindful of changes in them and just be more aware. People don't know what is happening inside their brains. So my advice is to love yourself as you are. Don't be afraid to tell someone when you are not feeling good. Make sure when someone is checking in so no one falls through the cracks. Let's normalize mental health and make it a positive part of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. We really appreciate you being here and your support of both the Disability Thrive initiative as part of our advisory committee, as well as being an advocate and supporter of this webinar.
Thank you.
We really appreciate your time today. So hello again. My name is Amber Carey Navarrete, and on behalf of myself and the entire Disability Thrive team, we thank you for joining us as we discuss the topic of mental health. Our mental health is just as important as our physical health, and most all of us have struggled at one point or another in this past year with maintaining a positive, healthy mental state. This continues to be the case as we look forward. Apprehension, excitement, anxiety, these are just a few of the mix of emotions we may be experiencing as the community opens up and we re-engage in the world. Supporting mental health has always been a part of disability services, whether intentional or not. And likely it has been and will continue to be an even larger part of alternative services. This support is not just needed by those who use these supports and services, but those who provide services and family caregivers as well. We are all healing together. During this webinar, we have presenters providing mental health education, a live discussion with panelists sharing their different perspectives on how we can all support our own and each other's mental health. And we are also fortunate enough to have a couple of presenters who will be sharing some mental health resources available to the disability community. Next slide. I would now like to introduce Jason Frey, an associate marriage and family therapist who has been part of a team providing support to families through United Cerebral Palsy of the Inland Empire's Family Empowerment Program. Thank you for being here, Jason. Go ahead and take it away.
Thank you so much, Amber, for that warm introduction. I'd also like to thank Nicole for really setting the stage and bringing light to everything she just mentioned, and to be so brave as to share her personal experiences. So thanks again, Nicole. When we look at mental health, we have our definition, but ultimately, when we look at a person with good mental health, they're going to face ups and downs, but they're going to be able to bounce back from it. When we have a disorder, they're not going to be able to bounce back typically on their own, and they're probably going to need medication and or a combination of medication and therapy. NAMI also gives us a definition of what it looks for mental health disorders in children. Next slide, please. We've all experienced COVID differently during this last year, and some were good ways, some were negative ways. Studies report that right now women are reporting higher rates than men and children in depression and anxiety. And we're looking at the Hispanic and Black adults reporting higher rates, and younger adults higher rates than older adults. And below we have some additional symptomology that is associated with anxiety and depression. Next slide, please. As you experience this pandemic on your own, you may have seen some of these typical symptoms and or concerns. Working with children and persons with disability, what I saw them experience was the loss or the ability to do things that they used to do without problem, such as going to school. Right now, I have a young man, he's in first grade, who has a cognitive delay that prevents him from being able to wear the face mask. Although his school allows him to attend school without the face mask, the school bus will not, and he's prevented from going to school. Other clients I work with have not been able to get into their medical providers for evaluations, tests, and different things like that. A lot of them have a hard time communicating via telehealth, or there are other problems that cause them delays in that. But regardless, every one of us has experienced some type of symptomology due to this pandemic. Next slide, please. You as a direct care provider, you're going to see things directly and indirectly. So as you're working with that client and you see them being persistently sad for 2 weeks or more, that is a definite sign of depression and something that needs to be brought to somebody else's attention so we can get them mental health care. Also, frequently there will be changes in eating habits, whether it be eating too little or too much. They may be gaining or losing weight unintentionally. And with depression, you may see overt acts such as them actively trying to harm themselves and or commit suicide. You may hear them talk negatively about themselves, hearing things like, I wish I wasn't here, I just don't want to wake up. Life would be better without me. And internet searches and resources. I was attending a seminar presented by Google the other day, and one of their department leads was talking about how they changed on Google, where if a person starts researching different mental health things, that it will guide them to resources, techniques, and other means to help them. So they try to do this in a more expeditious way. Now, in the indirect things that you're going to have to be observant of, if your client is telling you, I'm just feeling achy, painful, there might be some underlying depression that's occurring there. A lot of people, when they get stressed, they'll clench their jaws, and so they're going to have jaw pain from a result of that. Fatigue with lack of motivation, or they just don't want to do anything. Problems getting a good quality sleep. And if we look at what we refer to as somatic symptoms, we're looking at headache, nausea, weight loss or gain, excessive sweating for no apparent reason. And this is just the body's way of reacting to the stress that they're facing. Cavities. So when your client is not taking care of their personal hygiene, obviously they can get the mouth, oral problems, but also cavities and oral hygiene can be part of the effects of medication. And when I say tics, persons, when they come under stress, may just get a nervous tic where their shoulders are raising, or a facial gesture or something like that. Just things for you to be in mind. Next slide, please. When we look at children and teens, a lot of the direct observations are going to be very similar to adults. But things you might look at are drastic changes in their mood, the out of control behavior, destruction, things like that. When we get into indirect, we can look at a child or a teen who was happy doing a normal activity, and now they found they're no longer interested in doing what they used to like to do. And when you present them with that option, they go, no, I'm bored, I don't want to do that. Also with children, they're mandated to go to school, whether that be in person or in Zoom. They might start having poor attendance, not going at all, or poor performance. Just things to keep in mind. The feeling of restlessness, just inability to stay still for no apparent reason. And when we look at regressive behavior, that's we're looking at them going back to an earlier stage of life. We'll say we're looking at a teenager who's now acting like a toddler, bedwetting, And or you may see them where they're becoming extremely clingy, where they do not want to be away from you, their caretaker or somebody else, and maybe chronic crying. Next slide, please. So how can you keep them safe and assist them? I think one of the best examples I've seen about keeping a person safe from health hazards came when I went through foster care training. In that training, they said you need to keep the hazards away from the kids that you're supervising, such as weapons, medication, and poisons. And the reason why I say that is that depression and anxiety may be temporary, meaning it can last for moments, hours, days, weeks. However, the impulse activity with the ability to have access to weapons, medication, poisons can be a lifelong, catastrophic hazard to these clients that we're watching. The other thing is that monitoring their behavior. You're there with them every day. You're seeing what their behavior is like, good, bad, indifferent, and they may have a change in their medication. And one thing with psychotropic medication, it is not like taking aspirin or other pain relievers. With those, you take the aspirin pain reliever, within 20, 30 minutes, you're going to see a difference. With psychotropic medication, that can take up to 4 weeks or longer to start show serious effects. And when we get to the somatic symptoms that they were experiencing, that may take somewhere between 3 and 6 months for them to be able to pull out of that. Obviously, you're working there in a professional capacity, and if you see suspected abuse, neglect, or exploitation, you are expected to report that. And if I can give an example, you're there to help. I've put people because it's not just your client, it could be their family or other members assisting with them. You're looking at this from a different perspective, an outside perspective. Okay, they're dealing with the day-to-day stress of working with this client or family member. And sometimes, if I were to say there's some writing on this paper, but if I hold it up to my eyes, the problem is just too close. If I take it away from my face, I can see it. And that's something that you can do, just provide that additional outside clarity to help direct them. As I have down at the bottom, you are our first line of defense there. We appreciate all you do. Next slide, please. Empathy, it can't be emphasized enough. This is you looking at things from a different perspective. You may not understand what they're dealing with, but you're trying to view it from another perspective. And that's helping to build these relationships with and those that they're working with. Next slide, please. This is something in 2021 that amazes me. The stigma and cultural factors with behavioral health, as Nicole brought light to it, we need more education and we need to work with this. Okay. I was just in a webinar today, and they were discussing how so many people with major depressive disorder may take up to 8 years to seek therapy and or treatment because of the stigma associated with this. So when I talk about the public, that is how the public will be viewing them. And the person doesn't want to be viewed as, I'm crazy. It's their self-perception. They don't want that address towards them. And the institution, especially for those who are working or in school, how are those coworkers or peers going to be affecting them? So just keep in mind, this is something you're going to have to work with. And in culture, every culture is going to handle this a little bit different. I work with a Hispanic culture, and they have a different viewpoint in autism. And so many family members have told me, you know what, they're just going to grow out of it. And they think this is going to be magic. And then it's an education process for them. Like, no, this is a lifelong, this is who they are. We need to work with them. And we also need to work with their family to get them to understand. And The other part I work with is persons with physical disabilities. Maybe they're experiencing pain, or such as when I have a person with MS, they say, I don't look the same as other people. I don't act the same as other people. And they identify as looking and acting different. And the parents just do not understand their depression with that and thinking it's something that they're just going to be able to snap out of. And it doesn't really work that way. Next slide, please. And so you as the professional, a couple things that you need to know is know your department policy and agency policy. You're going to be dealing with things that there will not be an answer in your handbook of how to handle every situation. But that's what a supervisor is for. Go to them, ask them questions, and seek their guidance. They would rather you talk to them rather than just let something go. We're all mandated reporters. Something that is important, like I work in multiple counties, so I have to have the phone numbers for CPS and APS for that county that I'm working in. The other thing is you should have the forms available to you. When you look at that form, if you've never filled one out, fill them out and give it to your supervisor for review. What that's going to do is help you to make a more clear, concise report. The other thing is when you have to make that phone call to actually call in a CPS or an APS report, fill out the form first. It's going to have all the information that that intake officer is going to be asking you for. And it will make your phone call considerably shorter. I've seen it be as fast as 15 minutes, whereas if somebody's not prepared, it may take 45 minutes to an hour and a half. So if you can prepare, it's going to save you a lot of time. Self-care. I left nothing after that because there's too much to talk about. You're a human first off. Okay? Dealing with people with special needs and disabilities and just regular persons is difficult. It is mentally consuming, it is physically consuming. But if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of them. So make sure you're taking your time off, take your breaks. When you're off work, try to stay off work and listen to your family and friends. When they're asking you repeatedly, are you okay? They might be seeing something you're not. And you might want to then look at that and go, you know what? This is really getting to me. I need to go seek care for myself. In closing, I'd like to say that we're all humans and a smile does a lot and is very contagious. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. That was great. I really appreciate your time and all that important information you shared, especially the differences we sometimes see between adult and children. We have, a diverse audience with us today, and the fact that all of us need to really, look out for ourselves and then look out for each other, I think was a message throughout that entire presentation, and I appreciate you for being here today. So next slide, please. I would now like to take the information that we were all just provided by Jason, those signs and symptoms to watch for, overcoming mental health stigma, and the role of empathy and understanding, and turn the discussion to what specifically this is looking like within our community right now. With us today, we have James Peterson, who has been a provider of services with Easter Seals of Southern California, and as of this past year has been the mental health outreach and engagement specialist with Orange County Healthcare, specifically brought onto that project to bring their support and services to people with disabilities. Also with us today is Betsy Cates, member of the board of directors with the ARC California, a parent of a person who uses services, and who has also been a huge advocate for mental health support during the pandemic. And that just may be an understatement. So please join us. Thank you. And then back by popular demand, Elizabeth Grisby, a consultant with the ARC of California and a rights advocate with Golden Gate Regional Center. All right, so Thank you. Thank you to all our panelists for being here today. So to start off, if we could just go ahead and go around and share a little bit about what this past year has been like for you. What sort of things have you been experiencing that are related to mental health, either you yourself or maybe some loved ones? James, do you want to go ahead and get us started?
Sure. Thank you, Amber. Yeah, so I try to be as open and honest as possible about my own mental health experiences, just because I believe being open about that will facilitate discussion with others and, work towards destigmatizing mental health. So I've struggled with depression and anxiety myself the past 10 or 12 years of my life. And over the past year with, the isolation, as others have brought up, that kind of affects us. And it certainly had brought me down a little bit, and I had to recognize that and see those symptoms of depression kind of rearing their head up again and seek counseling. And, by being proactive, I feel like I definitely was able to cut off any problems that may have come had I not sought out some help. And again, going back to destigmatizing, there's nothing wrong with seeking help. There's nothing wrong with going to a doctor if you feel sick, just as there's nothing wrong with going to a counselor if you feel depressed or anxious. And equally, I've been working with individuals in the community, namely on the autism spectrum, who they've been out of the community for the past year or so. And there was one gentleman specifically I was working with who was very involved in their community and hadn't been over the past year and wanted to get back out there. So him and I came up with what we called a safety plan, essentially. And he was not worried at all himself about experiencing any issues about re-entry. However, just to be proactive, we decided to come up with a plan in case he did experience anything or any undesirable experiences once he re-entered. And thankfully, we did come up with that safety plan. And unfortunately, though, he had to implement it. He wound up having a panic attack out in public. But thankfully, because of the safety plan we developed with him and his parent, the parent was able to de-escalate him and make sure he was safe and kind of ensure that going forward that he would go into the community safely. So if anything, I got to just stress too, just be open, be honest. If you're worried about going out into the community, develop some sort of safety plan, whether it's, a psychological safety plan, a physical one. Many people experience anxiety with the idea of crowds because they're worried about COVID, and rightfully so. So set up a plan in case you do run into those scenarios to where you can navigate it safely.
Excellent. Thank you. That's great advice. All right, Betsy, what would you like to jump in here? What are some of the things that you've been experiencing and any safety plans you've been putting into place?
Sure. Thank you, Amber. Well, I think when all of this hit, we were probably doing as well as we have been able to do over the years. And the day I got the call that David's program would be closing for an undetermined length of time, I knew right then and there, at some point we'd be having problems. So our quality of life over the past 14 months has been largely defined by how our son was doing. And David has autism and he values routine and predictability. So initially he accepted the closure and having to stay at home, and actually tolerated it longer than we thought he would. But eventually it caught up to him, and not in a good way. The two biggest problems were that he just had nothing to do during the day, and he missed his social interaction with peers and with the staff at his program a lot. So he had a really tough time with that. And we tried a number of different things. We bought materials and made lists of activities and places they could go, and arts and crafts and stuff to cook and bake, and none of it was really helping. And short of showing up at his apartment every day to implement these things, we weren't getting anywhere with it. So things started to deteriorate. And when things became more difficult every day, and we had run out of ideas and things to try, and the person is becoming more anxious and agitated, you realize you need professional support. Now, David is not aggressive or destructive, but he was very anxious and he was having meltdowns. So We knew we weren't in a crisis yet, but if you don't get help soon, you're going to have eventually you'll get to a full-blown crisis, and parents don't want to experience that. So we began the process of searching out some resources that could help. And it did take a lot of persistence, a lot of advocacy, and more time than I wanted to. But we finally connected with a behavioral specialist who constructed a weekly planning system for him. It returned some of the control and choice to him, which was really important. And then most importantly, we found a psychiatrist who understood the dynamics and how to handle the meltdowns that were troubling and really exhausting. So that did include some medication, which I wasn't conflicted about at first, but it turns out it's been highly effective with no side effects. And I'm happy to say that we have a much, much happier person now. So my point is that one person's problems can affect everyone in the family, but the right intervention for our son allowed him to become calmer, his mood improved significantly, and everyone else in the family was able to relax and feel that a weight had been lifted off our shoulders. So if you're listening and you're a parent or another family member or someone who works with a person who's experiencing something similar to this, and you feel like you need help, we will be providing resources and encourage at the end and throughout this webinar. And we encourage you to reach out and be persistent to get the help that you need and deserve.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm already hearing kind of themes about, really recognizing, right? Recognizing and being on it and not delaying, like we were hearing from Jason, delaying 8 years to get help. So Liz, what can you add to this conversation? What has the past year been like for you? And what sort of things have you been putting into place?
First of all, I would like to say, speaking of about the depression, even if you have a disability, doesn't make us brave. It's just everybody needs to know that it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
And it doesn't make you brave because you're talking about it. I have had my own battle with depression for years, clinical depression, and I see a therapist once a week, every Tuesday, and it has helped me tremendously just to remind myself that having a bad day and being sad are just part of life. It's okay. What's not okay is to be stuck in it and not having a way to get out.
Mm-hmm.
I work as the rights advocate for Golden Gate Regional Center, and I tell people all the time with disabilities, don't let your disability stop you. You can do anything that you put your mind to. And I believe that wholeheartedly. But when you're in a depression mode, it feels like none of that exists. None of the positivity words that I give people exist. And sometimes I have to step back and look at my inner self and be like, I'm not that little child anymore that my family told me I was never gonna amount to anything because of my disability. And just letting that tape that plays in your head, let that go. I mean, it's gonna be a part of you, yes, but what you do with it in your life is totally up to you. And now I live on my own, which my family said I would never do. And yes, I have a job and I have friends and a whole community that care about me and I thrive. And even though I have a disability that will never go away, and it's part of who I am, I can sit at home. We can all sit at home and have a pity party about the COVID and depression, or we can get out and do something about it. So I just want to let everybody know, just like your disability is not who you are, neither is the depression. You're much more than that. So when you feel depressed, let's think of ways, positive ways, to turn that depression into action and not turn it inward on ourselves, but outwards to help others. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Liz, for sharing that. I think sometimes a lot of us find that easier said than done, but I think a key point, and I'm curious what you think, Liz, and our other panelists, you were talking there about kind of your support network, right? And our communities, right? And would you say that that's part of what is able to help turn it into action?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I have two communities. I have the disability community, and I also have my LGBT community, which I'm trying to bridge the gap between the two. And I feel very strongly for both communities. I want to advocate for love and acceptance on both sides.
Yeah.
And that will help my depression, because I feel like if I can reach out to both sides and really feel and get to know my identity, I will feel better about myself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense to me, Liz. Thank you for sharing that. Let's continue this discussion kind of about the role of our communities, right? Part of the reason that you were invited here as panelists is not just because of your rich personal experiences that you have to share, but that all of you are also very much tapped into your communities. And so what have you been seeing and hearing as far as those communities go, both in what they're experiencing and those support networks that are in place that are helping? So Betsy, would you like to go ahead and lead us off this time?
Sure. Well, We have a lot of parents on the board of the ARC California. And so all of us have pretty wide networks and contacts and are experiencing it ourselves too. So we kind of started there, and all of us were hearing stories of real hardship. And to a point of that was raising a lot of concern for us. So we approached our executive director, Jordan Lindsay, and the board talked about what we could do. And we decided the first thing we needed to do was to learn more about the problem. So we did a survey, and the survey was a brief one. It had a lot of open-ended questions because we were hoping people would tell us in their own words what they were experiencing, what their needs were, what their unmet needs were, and what were their ideas for what would help to improve the situation. So we sent that out, and we received 400 responses, which was more than I thought we would get. And I'll just take a minute and highlight some of the findings, which I think are germane to this discussion. And also, as we begin to think about reopening our service programs and what we need to be aware of in order to make that a smooth transition for people. So 80% of the 400 responses we received were from parents or other family caregivers. And in most instances, their family members were still living at home. When asked how their loved one was doing, or in some cases, it was a self-advocate who was filling out the survey, but 66% reported moderate to serious difficulties, which is an awfully big number. Yeah. Many of these difficulties are the signs and symptoms that we just heard Jason talking about a few minutes ago, like trouble sleeping, weight gain or loss, increase of troubling behaviors, depression and anxiety, and several reports of a person just walking away from a home and having to be reported missing, and in some cases missing for a long time. So all of these were very concerning. Almost half of the respondents told us that when they sought help, it was insufficient. And many said they didn't know who to call, didn't get a call back, or were told there were no resources to help them. And they described feeling more supported if they were able to connect with someone that they had worked with and knew well before a program closure, which kind of underscores and emphasizes the role of programs in the daily lives of people who attend them and their families. So 90% said their family member would like to return to their day program, but that was dependent on what type of safety precautions would be in place. And they were quite specific about their expectations. So this is just a brief summary of the survey results. We did publish them in the Monday morning memo. So they are available to review. But it is a snapshot of time that tells us that this disruption in the lives of people with IDD and their families has imposed significant changes in family routines and created an awful lot of stress. It's now been several months since we conducted the survey, and as a community, we should want to know more about how people are doing today. Have these difficulties fallen disproportionately on different groups? Is it more difficult for some people to access resources than others? What is our understanding of the extent to which mental health problems exist in our community today? And most importantly, what are we prepared to do to support those who have been affected by the impact of the pandemic? So this webinar affords us an opportunity to put the spotlight on a critical issue and create some momentum to develop a systematic and focused effort to address it. I know that DDS is doing a survey also. I'm looking forward to seeing the results of that. And at least we have some data now and some sense of direction and what the needs are.
Yeah. No, thank you. Thank you for being part of that original survey, and then just getting the message out there that, and to all of those of you in the audience too, when you see these come around, encourage people to get involved and to be part of them, because that's where this information comes from, and then the community can be responsive to it, right? Especially the things you were talking about the supports and services and that need and everything. I know that's why alternative services came about in the first place. And so, James, it reminded me a bit also when Betsy was talking about the safety protocols and everything's kind of contingent upon these things. So what have you been hearing from the community, and as far as both, what they've been experiencing and sort of what's needing to be put into place for people to kind of move forward now?
Yeah, kind of to just more of Betsy's point. They're from just anecdotal experiences and in conversations and interactions with people in the community. They're experiencing mental health complications for the first time. Again, there's another instance of a participant I used to work with back when I was at ESP. Ran into them not too long ago during one of our vaccine clinics, and they were expressing some depressive symptoms, and talked to parent about that too. And what was needed there was education, because parent assumed one thing and just thought, oh no, this is just how it is, but realized, okay, maybe there's some level of intervention here needed. And I believe they did go find that help. It definitely seems like, those in the disability community, with IDD, they are experiencing it more than people realize. And I think I think Liz was making the point of, that it's not seen as much because of maybe of the disabilities that they have. So the big thing is just, be aware, I think. And going back to what Betsy said too, having that comfort of coming back. I think that's what's needed, especially for families too, that are struggling with all this. They want that feeling of safety with their loved ones. So to tie it all up, really, seeing this quite a bit in the community, and people are concerned about safety, and safety is of utmost importance, both physically and psychologically and emotionally. So it really seems like the community desires those things right now.
Yeah. So I think, like everyone here has been saying, as we are taking our alternative services forward and starting to reinvent and re-engage with services, that, this just needs to be, this isn't an add-on. This is where it's kind of a starting place, right? As things are being created, and as we're considering, the structures and the support, that mental health is kind of coming first, and supporting the positive mental health through these times. So Liz, I know that you were also talking about the kind of the stigma, and just being proud and comfortable about who you are. And of course there's stigmas in all of the different areas. We've talked about it in our unconscious bias webinar, right? So talk a little bit more about what you see, and then we'll open this up to the rest of the panel. What have you been seeing efforts being made to reduce stigma around mental illness, mental health issues and complications, as well as the role we can all kind of take there to try to reduce that stigma or the negative connotations with it?
First of all, I just want to say, we as a community, as people who work in this field, we need to stop saying, oh, it's just their disability, oh, it's a behavior problem. We need to look more in depth into why is somebody acting out, and why are they not happy? And if they do go back to traditional program, when we open up, if they are not acting in a way that they normally don't do or what have you. Don't just ignore their feelings and be like, oh, you just need to go take a time out or whatever. They might be trying to express how they're feeling, and by ignoring them, it's not helping the situation. And speaking of biases, so many times I feel a disconnect between the DD and IDD and mental health, because everybody says, oh, we have the regional center system. You don't need the mental health system. We don't know how to help you. And then the regional center is like, when you have depression, you need to go see a therapist. But then they don't, when you go see them, they say, oh, well, the regional center will be able to help you. And it's like, you feel kind of lost because you feel like nobody wants to deal with the root of the problem. Everybody wants to say it's because of your disability. And let me be the first to say my depression, yes, it has a little bit of to do with my disability, but my depression stems from how I was raised. All of it doesn't have nothing to do with my disability. So that's a stigma in itself.
Right.
We need to stop putting labels and stigma on our community.
Right.
It's not right. It's not fair.
Right. No, absolutely. And we have just a few more minutes for this discussion. So I'll kind of roll that into it as we touch base with everyone one last time. Definitely, please do speak to the stigma issue and anything that we can do through empathy, understanding to reduce stigma. And also if there's any particular tips or resources or self-care that you can recommend, these will kind of be our final thoughts as we close out here. So we'll go ahead and James, will go to you next.
Sure. Yeah, definitely a great resource I found. I've been a volunteer with them for about 5 years now, is the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Specifically, they have a talk or an initiative they call Talk Saves Lives, which I'm a speaker for as well. And it really speaks to the stigma of mental health and destigmatizing and educating. And AFSP is really a great resource if you're looking to educate yourself, to help educate others, and really just get rid of that stigma that's attached to mental health. They're all over the nation. They have a chapter in Orange County and other parts of California, but they're definitely a great resource. And, to Liz's point of, the stigma, it's really important to destigmatize mental health, depression, anxiety, because it's just another health issue, and a very, unfortunately, common one that just needs to be talked about more. And AFSP is a great organization for that.
Thank you so much. Betsy?
Well, I think that a lot of parents and other caregivers do feel that stigma and a sense of being somehow outside the mainstream. And so that's one of the I think great things about peer support, parent-to-parent support, which I've always been a big proponent of. And there's just, with other parents, there's a natural bond that is shared and caregivers that fosters mutual understanding. And that reassures us that we're not alone. When you're with others in a similar situation, you don't feel so different and you don't have to explain yourself. You can exchange ideas and strategies and you don't feel excluded from the rest of society. So it is a normalizing and affirming experience. When I was involved in running support groups, it was not unusual to walk out into the parking lot after we had cleaned up and secured the office to find most of the group still outside talking with one another. And they were in no hurry to get home. And I think that speaks to the power of that connection and being able to bond with someone who's in a similar situation. And it also, I think, it encourages us to take care of one another, to affirm other people's experiences and feelings. And there is something to be said for reaching out with a kind word, a phone call, or some encouragement that comes at just the right time. And those gestures mean so much during a time of uncertainty. And I think it speaks to the empathy we've been talking about earlier today. And the empathy is a really important characteristic and quality that I think helps us as families and as self-advocates as well to get through some of these difficult times. So my last thought is that even if you have never been connected with a support organization, you can take that step now.
That's great advice. That's great advice. And it even makes me think of what Nicole was saying about checking in. Everybody should have somebody they're checking in on right now and somebody checking in on us, right? It means so much. Thank you for that. Is there any final quick thing you'd like to add, Liz, about, you know, resources or checking in with each other?
I just want to say, when you find a community that you feel good about, hold on to that community, embrace that community, let them know how you're feeling, and if you find a therapist that you trust and that you feel like you can open up to, I can't say it more. Having therapy, I think everybody should go for therapy because it really helps. It changed my life tremendously. I thank God for my therapist every day because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't because of her being her hard work and never giving up on me.
Oh, thank you so much. Yes, seeking support, whether it's through groups and connections and therapists. Thank you all. Thank you to all of our panelists today. I believe your experiences and this advice that you've given will help all of us. I think we can take these things into our daily lives as we learn to better support ourselves and each other, whether it's through alternative services or just in our personal lives. So again, thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Amber.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber.
Thank you. All right, so next slide, please. Next, I'd like to introduce Graciela Cortez, licensed marriage and family therapist, who is also part of the UCP's Family Empowerment Program. She will be sharing more about that program and how it, and other programs like it, are available for mental health tips and support for the whole family. She'll also be sharing some of those tips with us here today so that we can start putting them into practice now. Thank you so much, Graciela.
You're welcome. Hello, my name is Graciela Cortez, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. Wait a minute. I'm presenting today the United Cerebral Palsy Inland Empire Family Empowerment Program. This family empowerment program is facilitated in English as well as in Spanish to address common topics such as stress, depression, and anxiety. Among other parents of children with disabilities, this program was developed after the program manager of this organization heard common concerns from families in respite program. Next slide, please. Often parents share that they were feeling stressful, anxious, and they had lack of support from family members and friends. The United Cerebral Palsy Inland Empire looked for resources and could not find programs for parents, specifically designed for parents. Then the program manager of this organization decided to create a curriculum based on her expertise and from conversations with parents in the program. Yes, some of the topics parents share during the program are how parents' mental health is challenged by the demands of taking care of a child with extraordinary needs. A focus of this family empowerment program is placed on how marriages and or relationships are affected. Next. This family empowerment program is composed by 6 bi-weekly sessions and includes You Have the Power, Balancing Caretaking, Siblings Issues, Feelings, Taking Care of Yourself, and Building Healthy Relationships. Next. Parents and caregivers also learn how to understand the common mental health challenges or being a parent of a child with disabilities. They recognize to address serious concerns. They They also learn how to minimize barriers to get help and access resources. The most difficult thing that I hear during the pandemic is that they're dealing with the isolation and lack of services during COVID-19 pandemic. It has been a challenge for them because since last year, we have been providing the classes on Zoom. Some of the parents never had this before. They don't even have a tablet or a cell phone. Some of them, not all of them. And they had to learn step by step how to use somebody else's tablet, cell phone, or how to use the program. Many parents were sharing that they did not have space in their homes to be able to have privacy for their classes. Sometimes we have to adjust to the noise of children, of parents who were sharing. Or sometimes the kids appear on the screen saying, hello. They were less, I'm sorry. And when parents realized that we were there for them, they were less preoccupied and more motivated to actively engage in the process of the class. Next. Parents in the program also learn to recognize the difference of what they can and cannot do. And that the more they struggle with what is out of their control, the more they will be affected by such negative feelings that they make feel, such as stressful, anxious, and depressed. Once they recognize what they have not control over, they will be able to get their self-power back. Next. They also learn that strength is not determined by the situation, but it's determined by what we do with that situation. It's important to stop and ask themselves, what can I control in this situation? And what is my reaction to it? Next, I give you an example. In this drawing, if a parent or a family member of a child with disabilities is having a difficult time, they often have a negative feeling. Then, such negative feeling affects the way they think. As a result, they react negatively. Next. This also happens for caretakers. As caretakers, if you allow clients to share their feelings and listen to them with empathy and understanding, part of their negative feelings is going to be relieved. This is what happened to them. I'm going to open a bottle. You might not see me. Are you seeing me? Can you see me?
Yes, we can, Graciela.
Okay, so I'm going to open this bottle and explain you what happened when you are able to listen to them with empathy and understanding. See, part of their stress or the negative feelings they're having is being released and they automatically feel better. I'm not saying this is going to solve all your problems, but this is helping them to clear their mind and be able to make better decisions. And they also learn to trust you and to be more connected to you and have a better relationship with you. Especially in this time of COVID pandemic, where many families have been isolated, and they did not have enough support or resources available. And if they do have them available, they don't know how to get into the Zoom classes, as I said before. Next. As a caretaker, it's important to be there for others. However, it's more important to be aware of your own feelings, thoughts, and reactions, and to think, what do I need and how can I accomplish it? Here are some tips for you. Next. Ask for help. I hear somebody saying that go to therapy. You can talk to a friend, a family member, somebody in your life. Find a support group. When I was going to school, I realized that we also were referred to support groups. And I thought, oh, I didn't know that I needed a support group. I'm going to be a therapist, help others. But I realized I needed to go to a support group in order to be an effective therapist. And I still need some help. I have a family member died last year, and I have to come back to therapy myself because I realize I'm a human being before I'm a therapist. And if I'm going to be there for others, then I need to take care of myself. The same with you. So it's important also to take breaks. To acknowledge your feelings and continue with what I was talking before. Next. You can also exercise and stay organized. In this program, going back to the program, there's also a part for the siblings of the children with special needs. It's important to give them time to talk to them, to be aware of their needs. If they're not emotionally able to be there for themselves, if you are not able to be there for yourself, you may not as well be capable of being there for others. So next. So it's important also, not just for the spouse, but for caretakers, for children, for the whole family. Because family, having a positive and healthy relationship takes time, effort, and energy. And the result of that relationship may lead you to have a happier and more fulfilling life, not only for you, but also for your loved ones. Next. And this United Cerebral Palsy in an Empire Parenting Empowerment Program is designed to understand that parents need time to accept and embrace the difference in caring for a child with disabilities. Therefore, it provides additional time at the end of every session to bring up the topics and support one another. So for more information on this family empowerment program, you can contact Lisette Moreno, Associate Director of Program Services of United Cerebral Palsy Inland Empire. And you can also contact Ronica Readings, the after-school manager for the after-class children activities. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Graciela. We really appreciate those helpful tips, and even more so knowing that we can reach out to family resource centers to find programs like the Family Empowerment Program. I know that this one is accessible to a lot in our community, but there are other programs with similar education and support groups. So if this is something that somebody feels they need, they can reach out to their family resource center through regional centers and hopefully get connected. So thank you so much, Graciela, for your time today.
It was an honor.
So we've heard a bit about resources so far, and now we're lucky enough to have Teresa Anderson, Public Policy Director with the ARC and UCP California Collaborative, here today to give us information on Project Connect, a resource created specifically for our disability community. Thank you so much, Teresa.
Amber, thank you. I appreciate being here today and having this opportunity. Before I get started, though, I really want to give a big shout out to my good longtime friend and co-advocate, Liz Grigsby. It's always nice to see her face, makes me smile. So, hey, Liz, I wish we could hang out a little bit more, hopefully soon. So anyway, with that, I'll get started on our resource. And you heard from Betsy, the survey and some of the things that we were hearing from families, parents, individuals with disabilities. And, you know, when the pandemic first started, there was so much fear and anxiety, and isolation just continued throughout the last 15 months. And, you know, when we first started thinking about how can we help people with these feelings, the ARC had a really great opportunity to partner with Stony Brook University School of Social Welfare and Social Work. So what they have graduate students there, and we were thinking, how can we partner? How can we work together to provide a whole range of services? And so we started talking with Stony Brook, and next slide, please. And created a partnership that the graduate students are supervised by licensed clinical social workers in the department, and they have to get their clinical hours. So part of their clinical hours, we decided to partner and create an internship where they could do a hotline and provide emotional, mental health support to individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, their family members and direct support professionals. And we launched that last November, and it was telehealth support line. Really took off. We were really impressed. We knew that people were struggling. We knew that the resource would be incredibly well received, and the hotline was able to offer a wide range of supports. And you know, obviously it was a really interesting experience because Stony Brook is in New York and we're in California, and we were really wondering how that would work, but it worked beautifully because they staff it 24/7. So you could call anytime, day or night, and you know, get somebody who could help work through whatever issue was going on. There's counseling, wellness checks, depression screening was a big one, referrals to community resources. We worked with the graduate students at Stony Brook to inform them and educate them about what resources are available in California. And it really made a huge difference. We had, we do periodic check-ins to see, you know, what types of calls are they getting? Do they need more resources? How can we here in California support their efforts in New York by supporting our folks here in California? So one of the kind of ongoing supports was that it's not a one-time thing. If you need to call every day, you call every day. If you need to call several times a day, you call several times a day. And one of the most, I I guess you'd say, rewarding, although it was very sad, but one of the graduate students said one of the most rewarding calls that they had the same person call several times, and the young woman lost her mom during COVID, and she had therapists, she had you know, she was still feeling pretty isolated because you know, she couldn't go out, she couldn't see her friends, she couldn't, you know, go to day program or do any of the things that she really liked to do, but she could call the hotline whenever she wanted. So she called pretty regularly for about 3 or 4 weeks because she was obviously very sad, and then gradually started to feel a little bit stronger. And she still calls, you know, maybe once or twice a week, but that's what this is really about, is meeting your needs where you are. If you need a call several times, or if you just need to call once, that's what this is about. Next slide, please. So you can see here, we encourage everybody to take down this number, to use this number. We know that there's also going to be a lot of stress and anxiety for people creating a new routine coming out of the pandemic. It's not easy to be, you know, in a new routine for 15 months, maybe even longer for some. And then, you know, having gone through the trauma, many people have different experiences of trauma through this time, whether they've lost individuals they love, whether they feel that their day program has been lost, and you know, they have to rebuild friendships. Just starting new routines is going to be really difficult. So we want to make sure that everybody knows that this is out there, and feel free to use it. It's a free 24-hour hotline, and sometimes they're very busy, so you'll have to, on occasion, we know that people have had to leave a message, but they call back within 24 hours. So it's because it's so busy, sometimes you don't get someone right away, but don't let that discourage you. So with that, I thank you again for giving me the opportunity to share this resource, and I appreciate everyone's time.
No, thank you so much, Teresa. We really appreciate your time. I truly believe this is one of the best and most accessible resources for everyone in our disability community. As you mentioned, you know, definitely for people who use supports and services, but everyone else, DSPs, families, everybody's welcome to call this number. So like you said, I hope everybody jots this down and spreads the word. If you know someone, we've learned the signs and symptoms. If you identify somebody or recognize somebody might need some help, here's a really, really amazing resource. So thank you again, Teresa, for your time.
Thank you.
So the Disability Thrive team wanted to make sure we left all of you with additional resources. Mental health support is unique to each person, and we hope that within these coming slides that there might be a resource here that is the right fit for you. You will see even that some of these resources are natively in Spanish, just in case that's the right fit for you or somebody you know. So go ahead and keep advancing slides. Thank you. Okay, and so please do continue to think of our Disability Thrive initiative as a resource to you as well. We will continue this conversation specifically on how we are all using empathy and understanding in new ways through alternative services to support mental health. So we hope to see everyone at noon this Friday for our Lunch and Learn. And as you can see here, lunchandlearn.disabilitythriveinitiative.org is where you get registered. Next slide. We also have our Disability Services Support Center. So if you are having any trouble getting connected to alternative services or need some support with the alternative services you are providing, please reach out to us at support.disabilitythriveinitiative.org. Next slide. We also have our resource library on our website, disabilitythriveinitiative.org, and you can sign up for email updates to know when all of our events are coming up at signup.disabilitythriveinitiative.org. Next slide. The next webinar we have coming up in just 2 weeks on Wednesday, June 9th, is about change management strategies for disability services to thrive. As we were just hearing just only moments ago from Teresa, that there's still more changes to come. We've gotten a new routine through these last several months, and now here we go, change again. And so learning about change management and how to lead change will be helpful in giving service providers the tools to begin planning for potential future scenarios, manage expectations and resistance to change, facilitate change with direct support staff, and engage clients, families, and other stakeholders in planning processes, as well as maximize opportunities for innovation. So we hope to see everyone there on June 9th, and you can register at webinar.disabilitythriveinitiative.org. Next slide. And finally, I want to thank all of you for being here and in attendance today. I do hope that you found some tips to use both for yourself and others as we spread empathy and understanding and hopefully reduce the stigma of mental health so that we all get the healing we need during this time. Thank you again.